So First Timothy is the first book of what we call the pastoral letters or the pastoral epistles. So that group is First and Second Timothy, and then Titus. So Timothy, we've learned from Acts, is sort of Paul's protege, um, his mentee, if you will, the young gun that his apprentice, if you're he's learning from Paul. Um, so there's some debate as to whether we've talked about this in other videos, but regarding other letters, there's some debate whether Paul actually wrote First Timothy. Most scholars seem to think not. Again, watch the previous videos if you need some more information on that. Specifically, Ephesians, I talked about it a little bit more, but um, it is certainly written in a tone which would reflect Paul to Timothy. So or it would certainly reflect a tone which is somebody who's been around the block, who's mentoring somebody who's new and fresh in the work. So it's there's sort of a metaphor in that too, or some symbolism, I'll say, in that too. Um, so First Timothy, it's pastoral in the sense that it's very specific. Or well, it's not specific, but it doesn't have these grand theological ideas so much as it's just everyday advice for the church and people of Jesus Christ. So it's writing to combat the teaching of dissenting insiders and suspicious outsiders. So again, heavy use of ancient philosophy as sort of like a template to help these people reading it to understand what the writer is getting at. Um, uh, First Timothy says that the church is the household of God. So it goes back to these household codes that we have read in a couple different letters up to this point, and uses that sort of as a metaphor for how the church ought to work. So in a household, people have different roles but the same importance. That's the idea behind the household codes. Um, and it never says this role is more important than that role. So when it talks about in the church, there's apostles and there's bishops and there's these sorts of things, and it never says make sure you obey the bishop, right? um, so it's this sort of um, all on the same level of importance but different roles. That's kind of what we're getting at in First Timothy. And kind of comes back to, then, with all of this in mind, we all have these different roles to play, um, and we are the household of God. Therefore, we need to live with some respectable behavior, not just because it's good to behave a certain way, but also to enhance our mission and image in the larger world, which really speaks to us today too, right? I mean, we can show up on Sunday morning uh, and that's great. But if then we live Monday through Saturday as if Jesus didn't have an effect on our lives, then we're not we're not presenting a good image of who Jesus is, and that's no different today than it was in First Timothy. So happy reading.